Okay, so for number 1, it says h of x negative x to the third plus 2x squared minus 15x to the 7th. Okay, first thing it's going to ask you, is this a polynomial, yes or no?
Yes.
Why?
Why? Because there's not a negative sign.
There's not a negative exponent?
Yep.
Or no fractions with letters in the bottom. Okay, if that shows up, not a polynomial. Then, so since you did say yes, now the second thing that I wanted you to do is I wanted you to put it into standard form, which means what? Highest exponent to lowest. What is the highest exponent?
7.
So negative 15x to the 7th. Then what? Negative x to the third. And then? 2x squared. Anything else that I missed for that? No. Can you put something into standard form? Real easy? Okay, what about the degree? 7. How did you find that? Highest exponent, right? Now this is the one that, for the type, this is the one problem. I don't know if they just missed that on there or whatever, but the highest exponent tells you what type it is. If there is no letters at all, it's known as a constant. One, like x to the first would be linear. X squared would be quadratic. X to the third is cubic. X to the fourth is quartic. And that's the highest they gave you. That little chart was found on page 158. Okay? But for this particular thing, we talked about this yesterday out loud. For this particular one, I would just go 7th degree polynomial because they didn't give you the actual word for it. Then, lead coefficient. What's the front number? Negative 15. And done. Are you comfortable or could you do this? If I gave you problems that look just like this. Now, tomorrow on your test, just so that you guys have an idea, it's 12 questions. 2 of which are just like this. So that's all you have to do is tell me all the pieces.
How do you know if it's a polynomial or not?
How do you know if it's a polynomial or not, again, is if you have any negative exponents whatsoever. So if that would have had negative 15x to the negative 7th, that's not a polynomial. Or, Nick, if it were to have, so if it had something like this, no. Or if it had something like 5 over x to the 4th, no. If you have a fraction where the letters are in the basement, absolutely not. Okay? So again, 2 of your questions are like this, where you have to identify all the pieces, and then you're done. Are you okay with that? Hopefully there's some easy ones there for you. Then, number 3 on here said h of x equals x squared plus 6x to the 5th minus 5. And on the assignment, it just said graph the polynomial. When we graphed in our sections, we also had you finding key points, right? By key points, I mean zeros, mins and maxes, stuff like that. That's what I'm going to ask you to do. You're going to have one graphing problem on your test where it's going to say graph the polynomial, identify the key points. What I mean by key points is I want you to tell me if there, how many, like where the mins and maxes are, where the y-intercept is, x-intercept. All of that can be done with your calculator. So the first thing that you need to do for this one is type it in your calculator and see what it looks like. If I type that into my calculator and see what it looks like, I get something that does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Something that does this, bounces just a little bit there, and then comes up like that. Is that about an approximate picture? Is that pretty close? Okay. Now, does anybody know what the y-intercept is? -5. How did you get that so quickly Courtney?
Trace on my calculator.
You hit trace on your calculator. You know where else it is? The constant. The constant is also always the y-intercept. So if you hit trace on your calculator after you've typed it in, that will give you the y-intercept every time. That's what Courtney did. If you look at the original equation, it also comes out, it's the constant. So far, so good? So, how many zeros are in this problem? And what is a zero? Say it louder, Luke. It's an x-intercept. Okay, a zero is nothing more than a fancier name for x-intercept. Luke, how many is there? One. Good job, Luke. There's one. Is there any minimums or maximums? Okay, what I mean by minimum or maximum, I'm not talking about the whole thing all the way to the bottom and all the way to the floor. I'm talking about, are there little turns somewhere in the road? Yes, there is. If it turns, if it goes up, that is a maximum. And if it goes down, that would be a minimum. Are there only two of them? Is there only one min and one max? Is that all you see? Me too. I'm just asking. Okay? So, how do you find them on your calculators? Second trace. Second trace is going to be your friend on this problem. Second trace, option number 2, says 0. So we'll use it for that. Option 3 says minimum. And option 4 says maximum. So second trace is going to give you all three parts that we need you to find right now. So after I've typed it in, if I go second trace, let's say I find the max first. Here's part of the problem with this one, since that dip is not very big. When you do this one, the first thing that'll come up is it'll say left bound, meaning the cursor will show up right here where the red one is, and it'll say, is that physically left of that curve or that hump? Yes or no? No. So which way do I need to move it? Left. How far? Just so it's on the other side of the curve. So if you move it to like right about here, that would be just fine. Then if you hit left, it should give you an arrow like that. Then it'll ask you right bound, which means that you move it over to the right. Okay, now, when you do this one on your calculator, you need to be really careful because some people last hour were doing this. They were putting the cursor here for left and then way up here for the right. That's not going to work because then the maximum will be wherever you left that point off. When you're finding a maximum like that, it's got to be where the curve is. Okay, not necessarily all the way over back over here. So you got to watch the cursor. It'll dip down just a little bit. Not much, but it will dip down when you go to the right. Realistically, where you need to put that is you need to put it almost right back here for the right side. Then it will ask you if you'd like to make a guess, which for the guess phase, make sure your arrows are pointing at each other. And then you hit enter. And what number came out? Negative 0.41 to negative 4.9. What was the rest of it? 3?
I rounded to 9.
Or 9? Right, that was the minute or the maximum. Oop, I put that on the wrong one. For the minimum, I do the same thing. I have the left bound about right here, the right bound about right here, and then out came this number. I've seen this now about 4 different ways. One person had 6.973e to the negative 7th and negative 5. I saw one person tell me it was negative 3.687 e to the negative 6 and negative 5. I had another person tell me 1.249 e to the negative 6 and negative 5. Which one's the right answer? All of them are. What's the number that they're trying to tell you when they say e to the negative 6 or e to the negative 7? 0. Okay? All these numbers right here, this one here, this one here, this one here. Whenever you see e and then you have a negative number like that, that's 0. Okay? So be very careful with your calculator. It will tell you that number and then negative 5, but that really is 0, negative 5. So the minimum was also at negative 0, is at 0, negative 5, just like the y-intercept was. For the 0, when you're going uphill, which this one is right now, what I mean by uphill is this. The flow of the graph is going up. Left bound is below the x-axis and right bound is above the x-axis. Don't need to guess, just make sure the arrows are pointing at each other and then what number came out for the 0. Point what? Anybody get it?
Oh, wasn't listening. Oh, I thought you said Joe. I mean, like, calculation.
I didn't find the 0.
Didn't find the 0? Okay, for sake of time, it's 0.93 and 0. Okay? Again, all that will be found, all of that stuff will tell you is straight out of the calculator. The calculator will do the whole thing for you. Okay? On 5, it's the same type of philosophy. Where negative x to the 4th plus x plus 2 is going into the calculator. So I'm going to draw what I see. And I got something that did this. Approximately looking like that. Is that what you guys got for 5? Okay. Nick, how many zeros for this one? 2. Good. There's a 0 here and a 0 there. Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Haley, is there a high point or a low point in this one? High point. Good job, Haley. So proud. That's a maximum. Clay, is there a y-intercept for this one? Is it across the y-axis? Yeah. Do you know where? No? Okay. So when you're doing this or setting this up, right now you've just identified those are the key pieces that we need to do. We need to find the zeros, we need to find the max, and we need to find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is always the number without the letter. What's the number without the letter in the original problem? 2. So the y-intercept is 2. How do you find the maximum again? Second trace. Option number 4. And what will happen is you'll have a cursor blinking like right here. Is that left of the high point? Yeah. So if I hit enter, you'll have an arrow coming out like that. Then it'll ask you to move it to the right of the high point. So then you move it blah, 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 somewhere over here. Hit enter. So then you would have 2 arrows pointing at each other, which is what you're just looking at for the guess phase. And then if you hit enter, the maximum will spit out at you. Anybody have it? 0.63 and 2.5. And again, when Courtney did that, because she was the one who told me the answer, she got it right out of the calculator. Right, Court? Yeah. There's nothing else that you're going to do for that. Now, as far as finding the zeros go, same thing. If I find the one that's on the left, this is going up the mountain. So that means left bound needs to be below the x-axis. Right bound needs to be above the x-axis. So when you move the cursor, it's got to be left here, right here. And guess, now just tell me the answer. And I think it comes out at -1, if I remember right. Then as far as you going downhill, if you're going down the mountain, left is above the x-axis and right is below the x-axis. And then the guess, nah, just tell me the answer. And what do you get? 2, exactly. And it's always 0, right? Should the y-coordinate always be 0?
Oh, I put the wrong one. Sorry.
1.4. Again, there's going to be one question where you have to graph it and tell me the important points. That's the important points. There was only one max, there was one y-intercept, and there were 2 zeros. Okay, what if it's got 3 curves? What if it does that? 1 point, 1 point, 1 point. Right? And then if it hits like this, 0, 0, y-intercept. So how many points would you have to find for that one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? You won't have too many. You won't be that big or as far as finding a bunch of them. But find the highs and lows, the mins and maxes. Find the zeros. That's what it'll ask you to do. There's only one question like it. Then on number 6, what am I asking you to do? Subtract them. Right. We're finding the sum or difference. Another thing that you're going to hear on the test tomorrow is it's going to say perform the indicated operation. Operations are referring to add, subtract, multiply, or divide. So for instance, this is a subtraction problem, right? What is 4x to the third minus nothing? Good. What is negative 12x squared minus negative 8x squared? Minus 4x squared. And the reason why it wasn't the other one, Devin, is because, remember, 2 negatives makes it a positive 8. Then if I go in order, that didn't have any friends, but there's a negative sign in front of the whole thing. What's a negative 4x? Negative 4x. And then negative 5 minus 3. Negative 8. Now, some people have a hard time getting the signs right when there's a minus right here. So here's an option. One of the things that I've seen, especially some of my college students do, is if there was nothing in the front of that, they just write it down as if it didn't have anything. And then they run the negative sign through to everything and switch all the signs. Then they combine their like terms. So then they go, oh, no friends. This one matches this one. That has no friends. This one matches this one. And I get the same thing. So if it helps you, do it. If it doesn't help you, don't do it. But it's your choice. Then on number 7, it's got x to the 4th plus 3x to the 3rd minus x squared plus 6 plus 2x to the 4th minus 3x plus 9. What operation am I asking you to do here? Add. So add like terms. What's 1x to the fourth plus 2x to the fourth? Good. What's 3x cubed plus nothing? 3x cubed. What's negative x squared plus nothing? What's negative 3x? What's 6 plus 9? Now, realistically, what I did was I wrote them in order. I put them in order from the highest exponent down to the constant. If you didn't put it in order like that, am I going to mark it wrong? No. But what I am going to look for is, do you have a negative 3 in front of your x? Do you have a negative 1 in front of your x squared? Do you have a 3 in front of your x to the third? I'm going to look for the coefficient. Does it match the letter? So if you have it jumbled around, it's not a big deal. I'm just going to look for, does the coefficient match the letter? Okay? Are you guys okay with adding and subtracting? Good. What do you do for this one? What operation am I asking you to do now? Multiply, which a lot of people use the acronym FOIL for, right? So what's 2y squared times y? 2y cubed. What's 2y squared times 3? 6y squared. Good. Now you have distributed that all the way through to everything, so now it's time to move to the next step. What's 4y times y? What's 4y times 3? Have you distributed that through to each piece? Yep. What's 7 times y? And what's negative 7 times 3? And then what I do is, for me personally, I like to write them vertically rather than horizontally sometimes. Where all I did was I lined up the like terms. That's all I did. So 2y to the third had no friends. What's 6 plus 4? 10. What's 12 minus 7? Minus 21. Okay? Are you guys okay with that? On the next one, I think it had, if I remember right, 2m plus n to the third power. What do you do when it's to the third power? Spread it all out. 2m plus n, 2m plus n, 2m plus n. Now what? You FOIL the first two. A lot of people try to do it all at the same time. They try to think that it goes faster, but it's wrong. So go two at a time. What's 2m times 2m? 4m squared. What's 2m times n? 2mn. What's n times 2m? Another 2mn. What's n times n? N squared. When you combine like terms right now, you have 4m squared plus 4mn plus n squared. And then I still have another 2m plus n to multiply. Then it becomes like the first one we did. What's 4m squared times 2m? 8m cubed. What's 4m squared times n? What's 4mn times 2m? What's 4mn times n? What's n squared times 2m? And what's n squared times n? Now, what I did for this one is I wrote it down horizontally like some of you guys like to do. So just to show you, it doesn't matter which way you do it. But these two are the same, and those two are the same. So 8m cubed didn't have anything. What's 4 plus 8? What's 4 plus 2? And then the n cubed didn't have any friends. So for that particular thing, when it's got cube, as Devin said, spread it out first, then we do 2 at a time. That's the only way that we have right now that you can do that. Later on, when you get into college, you might have 2 or 3 more options. But then again, the numbers will be bigger for the exponent. Like the ones I gave in college algebra would have that maybe to the 8th power. Which would mean that you'd have to write it out 8 times if you want to do it this way. But there's other ways of doing it. Okay? No. It involves a triangle. Okay. The next one. S plus 2. S plus 4. S minus 3. Even though they're not all the same group, do I attempt this one the same way that we did the last one? Yeah. What's S times S? What's S times 4? What's 2 times S? And what's 2 times 4? And when you combine like terms for that one, you get S squared plus 6S plus 8. And then now you have to times it by S minus 3. What's S squared times S? What's S squared times negative 3? What's 6S times S? What's 6S times negative 3? What's 8 times S? What's 8 times negative 3? Now if I combine like terms, there was no other cubes. What's negative 3 plus 6? 3. What's negative 18 plus 8? Are you guys okay with multiplying? So far we've done an adding one, we've done a subtracting one, we've done a couple multiplying ones. What's the last operation we haven't done yet? Dividing. Specifically long division or synthetic, right? So looking at number 15, do I have to long divide that one or can I synthetic divide it? Why do I have to long divide that one? The divisor's too big, right? So when I set that up, x squared plus 2x plus 1 goes on the outside. X cubed plus x squared plus 3x minus 4 goes on the inside. What times x squared gives me x to the third? X. Now, yesterday, one of your colleagues that's in this class, or in this Algebra 2 stuff, did this yesterday and asked me if this was right. They said x was the first one, and they were correct. Then they put x to the third, and they subtracted it, and then they started going with the next one. Is that correct? No. What are they doing wrong? They forgot about the rest of it. Right. They only did the front, not the whole thing. So again, when you say x goes in there, you got to times x to everything that's on the outside. What's x squared times x? X to the third. What's x times 2x? 2x squared. And what's x times 1? 1x. Draw your lines, switch your signs, answer it down. What happens with the cubes? They cancel. 1x squared minus 2x squared is what? Negative x squared. 3x minus 1x is how many? Good. And start over. What times x squared gives me negative x squared? Negative 1. Again, you need to multiply that by everything on the outside. So that's negative x squared minus 2x minus 1. Draw your lines, switch your signs, add straight down. What happens with the squareds? They cancel. What's 2x plus 2x? 4x. What's negative 4 plus 1? Negative 3. Can I go any further into that? Can I times something by x squared to give me a 4x? No. What is all that stuff in the bottom? Remainder. So the top was x minus 1 plus the remainder, 4x minus 3, over the divisor, x squared plus 2x plus 1. And that's 15. Can I long divide it or synthetic divide it? Long? Why? Yeah, the divisor's too big again. Shoot, huh? So x squared plus x plus 4. X to the fourth plus 3x to the third's going in there, minus 4x squared plus 5x plus 3.